Hello and welcome to Time to Talk. In this episode, we got together to continue our discussion of the Emotional Sobriety letter and instead ended up recapping what we've learned thus far, how we apply it to our lives, the lessons we've learned from it, and how it shapes our future as we move through it. Please join us for a wonderful afternoon in the backyard.
Today's the March 4th. It is sometime in the afternoon, I suspect. Talking about emotional sobriety again. We were just talking about children and diagnoses and things of that nature. It's a beautiful day. Beautiful early spring day, late winter. When's the first day of spring? It's coming up here. Time change happens soon. Spring is coming. It's coming soon. What's the first day of spring?
I don't know.
Sometime. It's a beautiful day. It's nice out. Dogs are running out here. Traffic's going around. The grass has got a tint of green to it. There's a warm breeze. Oh my goodness. We were talking about kids with diagnoses and how my daughter communicated how she communicated to me the ringing in her ears, which I can relate to, and that's the I can't remember the name for it.
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus, the tinnitus that she's experiencing, and it was only through she's teaching me how to converse with her, communicate with her at her level, and at the same time, I don't talk to her like a child. I talk to her very normally so that she's learning how to communicate and speak normally, or what is normal, right? So insert different word here, maybe intelligently or conversationally, but just talk about really anything.
Did you see her purple flowers?
No, I have purple flowers. Oh, they're beautiful. Oh, they're beautiful. I got to take a quick picture. Would you hold my page for me, please? Take a quick picture of the purple flowers. We were just out here playing kickball. Today's Tuesday or Monday? We were out here playing kickball Saturday, and these were not here. Photographic evidence of spring. So we're in paragraph 6.
Is that where
Bottom
we're
of the
at?
first page, yeah. At least we talked a little bit beyond that, but in our last recording session, I can't speak for anybody but myself, but as we were getting into the end of that recording session, I was feeling it was laborious. When the conversation, this is something I'm discovering as I do interviews and as we do these shows, that as the conversation becomes laborious, not like non-enjoyable, but just like, okay, we got to do this. We got to get to the end. It's time to pause. It's time to pause. That because the next time we reconvene, like for now, a whole lifetime of events has taken place in between then and now. You know, goals have changed, positions have changed, priorities have evolved. All these, in the blink of an eye, everything can turn into opposite world, upside down world. And what was so important moments before now becomes really secondary or just not as important. And I think that can happen almost any time with anything, right? And so this is a unique opportunity to continue this series from potentially a different mind space.
Different mind space for me.
So we went through the first 5 paragraphs of the Emotional Sobriety letter in the last 2 episodes. We look back, and feel free to take some time and read back through here. Is there anything you'd like to continue on or discuss that may have evolved for you in the last few weeks since the initial recording?
I'm understanding my unconscious, where it talks about how shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream. I think I'm recognizing my unconscious, or my habitual thinking patterns of action, things that I do without thinking. Right? It's not, I don't know if subconscious and unconscious are different, But it's almost like, for me, my unconscious is my autopilot.
Yeah. We have a friend who had a medical emergency and had a brain aneurysm. As a preventative measure or as an emergency measure, they drilled a hole in her skull to relieve pressure, and had a tube in there. And her retelling of that event is she remembers the moments leading up to this brain aneurysm. I don't know if I'm using the right term. Was it a brain aneurysm? I don't know. But she remembers the moments leading up to it. She was with somebody having a conversation, didn't feel well, went home to get an aspirin. Remembers walking into the house and then doesn't remember anything after that, including a helicopter ride and surgeries and everything that followed for a period of time, maybe weeks, a month, more. And then recalls coming back and waking up slowly over a period of days and coming back into her conscious self and having somebody in the medical care field with her in that moment of coming back into consciousness. And this person and others who had visited and stayed with 24 hours, she had 24-hour care, both professional medical and family. She was never alone. But she was not in a coma. She was operating this whole time. She was talking, eating, going to the bathroom, all the normal things.
Carrying on conversations.
And recalls none of it. And to her retelling of the story, all these people are telling her that it really wasn't her, that she wasn't herself. And the way that this person describes it, and I like it, is that she had a fill-in. She had a fill-in spot. We have dogs barking, so we're going to break for a moment.
How shall our unconscious from which many fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations stream? Talking about unconscious.
Versus subconscious.
Not versus, because I don't know the difference between unconscious, subconscious, whatever. To me, I'm just talking about unconscious and consciously doing things. And realize that I can be awake, aware, functioning, and still be unconscious.
Yep.
And you were talking about her friend who had the aneurysm, and she was talking and conscious, right, or awake during this entire time. She didn't even sleep, but she was talking with people, carrying on conversations.
Performing duties and tasks.
Yep, feedback to doctors, things like that. Doesn't remember a thing of it. And people that were with her and conversed with her said that yes, she was, but it wasn't her. It wasn't, air quote, her.
Yep.
And what that brings to mind for me was that just void of her personality or how she acts around people, certain people, or would react to things. And that was just her baseline consciousness instead of personality involved with it. And I don't know, because what I've realized for me, not that that's separate, because I realize I have personalities like a chameleon that I unconsciously go to. I'm not aware of it. I can do it and not be aware of it, just like when I get in the car.
Indeed.
And my foot goes on the brake and my hand on the key, and I'm doing simultaneously things without process, and put my right leg forward and put pressure on the brake. I don't have to process those things. So when I say unconscious, that's what I mean. Almost like autopilot.
Have you ever been driving from point A to point B, get to point B, and have no recollection of the trip?
Yep.
Yeah. That's autopilot.
Yeah. Blackouts.
Is that... Yeah, well, yeah, that was, a blackout, a substance-initiated blackout, or sleep deprivation blackout, perhaps. But then how our behavior during those blackouts, what is that? Is that the subconscious creature? I think in this letter it refers to the Mr. Hyde, right? We've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the base underlying creature. Now, in terms of substance abuse, alcohol abuse, that raging Mr. Hyde, I mean, we put in a mind-altering substance, and that has an effect. But in her case, was it mind-altering? Well, she had a brain aneurysm. Is that mind-altering? Did her body release chemicals to compensate? Is that mind-altering? Or, And so here we are talking about it. I want to put out there what she told me was that she exited. She was removed from that for whatever reason. Some might say to save pain and suffering. Others might say for an upgrade to learn. But that something was in the place of her in that bed for several months until she became conscious again. I believe medically there are some very plausible explanations about the pressure on the brain and the various things that happen and that, yep, you just had this event, so there is memory loss. Indeed, we can explain these things. That's just not always my understanding. You know, having a out-of-body experience can be life-changing. Whether we can consciously remember it or not is a whole other story. Some of the best things I know are in my subconscious. I don't even know I know them. That's my behavior when nobody's looking. You know, how do I naturally react when I stub my toe? Or when I'm frustrated with my daughter and nobody's looking? What do I do then? I'm reaching a little bit here. Okay, so we're talking about conscious and subconscious, and we have a friend who had an unconscious event where she didn't remember months of her life, and then comes back and relearning how to talk and do things, right? She was talking and normally acting. She returns to consciousness from this event and now has to relearn how to talk.
Like unconscious. So they say, and I'm air quoting, science says whatever. Multiple sources say we only utilize about 10% of our brain. And what makes me wonder about that, it's not that our full 100% doesn't function, is it that 90% of it is unconscious. It's that wiring that as we've evolved, developed, habitual, societal stuff that's kind of ingrained and hardwired. And that only leaves 10% or less for our conscious decision making.
Somebody recently, I was watching a program somewhere, and they explained what we're talking about. Let's see if I can recall. That there's all these marvelous things happening all around us at all times, but we don't see them because we get bored. We're bored with this existence. We're bored with this dimension, and so our brain sees things and deciphers things in a way that we're like, yeah, it's boring. I believe science has that study of the human sight has evolved to the point where I'm paraphrasing all of this, but that when a vision enters our eyeball, there's a delay between the time it enters our eyeball, or say off in the distance, from the time it happens to the time it enters my eyeball to the time it refracts through and is processed by my brain. There's a delay. So we're actually operating in the past versus what happens out in the world. And in that deciphering of the human brain, because what is sight? It's the translation, description of electrical impulses through an organ that I currently possess or that I currently utilize. And so is my brain deciphering and translating what it's seeing through the eyeball in a very normal way, because that's what I'm programmed to see, or that's what my understanding is of the world. What if, when somebody has an experience, right, call it a spiritual experience or a out-of-body experience, that their brains are deciphering what they're seeing in a more true, real way? What is true? What is real?
It seems to me that I didn't realize how much autopilot I was living on. The steps that I went through in a 12-step program helped me throw out chunks. The biggest ones, resentments for myself and others. But now I'm realizing this is what this is talking about. This is like beyond the booze cures, what this emotional sobriety letter is talking about. How come once we do that and do this stuff that the obsession is lifted, and so now we're away from that higher power, whatever that may be, that substance outside of ourself that we're wrapping everything that we do around. Once that's gone, why isn't everything else lifted? You know, I think this is kind of pertaining to where you'll hear people talk about, oh, you're just on the pink cloud. Well, that means with that reference, they're no longer on that pink cloud, and why? And so this is what I think he's getting to is now there's more than just that obsession. Now it's our unconscious. And how much of that is unconscious. And I didn't realize how much was unconscious. Like back to when, why am I caring about whether this floor is swept? Well, because I was raised, you have a clean floor or you ain't a good mama. That's an unconscious, in my opinion, that's an unconscious kickover for something I don't even understand why, but that's some hard wiring I was raised with. So now all of a sudden I got an issue with the dirty floor. That's unconscious thinking, in my opinion. Why am I reacting or feeling? It says in our books, anytime we're upset, not just when it's, someone else doing something stupid. Anytime we're upset, it's us.
Mm.
So if I'm upset about a dirty floor, has nothing to do with the floor being dirty. It has to do with my wiring, my opinion of a dirty floor. I didn't realize how unconsciously I was reacting to everything in my life. And it talks about, wanting prestige and all that stuff. Our idea of what my idea of success was. Where'd that come from? And that came from pre-wiring as I was brought up in society and my family and everything else. So if you don't reach that mark, you're not successful in your eyes. So to me, that's an unconscious wiring that I'm not aware of. I feel like I'm being more conscious as I realize those things. It's almost like our hardwiring, what my brain falls back on and does, just like getting in the car, turning on the key without thinking about it. Someone says success, I have some mark in my head that I'm unaware of why I have it, but I fall back to that. So I'm not consciously thinking about that when I spit out that answer. It's unconscious. And I feel like in this letter, that's what he's talking about. So how shall our unconscious, all those things, those needs, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, those hardwired, pre-wired things. Now that we got the clear slate of the obsession gone, it's time to look at those things, my stinking thinking that led to my drinking. And so you can ride on I'm just not drinking, and everything gets better. It's amazing how life gets better just with that, but you're selling yourself short, I feel, if you don't start looking at, as he's saying, the unconscious part of it. Just like what dogs you like or tend to, your likes and dislikes and interests. I started realizing every one of them were from past things that became hardwired for me. Because I let that be. So it's like now picking back through these unconscious things that I just rolled with before, thinking, is that really how I feel about that? It's like it's opening up brand new space in my brain for thoughts I never had before. Like, why is my favorite color green? I've heard people come in and say, I didn't even know what my favorite color was because it was whatever your favorite color was because I wanted you to like me. So it opens up that space to think about what it is for me now. Because it can also be memories. Color blue because my favorite blanket was blue and that was comforting for me. So blue, now, it wasn't unconscious then, but it's unconscious attraction now. So you're aware you like blue. That doesn't make it a conscious decision. Is, I guess, where I'm trying to go. And how much of this stuff is unconscious for me.
My dad wore some blue stuff, and I have memories of it. I know where it happened. I know washing the family truckster on vacation, and my dad had a blue jersey, and it was from his college, and it was blue and yellow, which years later I found myself gravitating towards teams that had blue and yellow as their color. I don't even watch sports. It's not my thing. But I like teams that are blue and yellow. And I thought my dad did too, and I found out years later I wore a blue and yellow shirt to their house, and they're like, oh, boo, we're Buck fans, we're Buckeye fans, and scarlet and gray. And I'm like, I didn't put this together. It's because you're his college jersey that he would wear washing the family truckster on family vacation was blue with yellow letters, yellow numbers on the back, and he wore green shorts. And I've always had a thing for green shorts. And so how much of that is early childhood? I just wanted to be near my dad. So I have this subconscious, unconscious pull, gravity, attraction to a color. And that could be many other things too. That that really is for many things.
The flip side of that, and I can only relate to my experience, flip side of that for me was you had a fond memory. For me, there was also the fond memories, but certain things would trigger off negative memories. Colors, things people wore, social scenarios, even television shows, and a certain thing going on, certain dynamic happening in a television show or a certain act in a television show. That would unconsciously trigger over very negative things. And I could be sitting with a wonderful person and unconsciously something be tripped over.
Mm-hmm.
And my decisions now are from that unconscious level instead of my consciousness. And realizing at my bottom, this is hindsight. I had no clue about this going through. How much, I feel like now I was running on less than 1% when I came crawling into the rooms. Because I was having debilitating panic attacks, hadn't been able to drive for a long time, going to any social public situation, even riding in a car, having to have a towel or a blanket over my head so I couldn't see anything oncoming. Fear. I realize now it was a culmination of all those unconscious fears that then I was afraid I'd focus on them, culminate them, push them into every now experience that I had, and became absolutely afraid of the world. And going through the process of this, throwing off big chunks, feeling like I'm coming back to myself, like baseline. So if baseline functioning society is, 10%, I feel like this is a way that we can dive into more of our unconscious and open up more of our free, happy, joyous, and free brain space without pulling those memories from then, good or bad. Because even if they're good, then you limit yourself to those things and don't even understand why. If they're bad, you avoid them and don't understand why. So millions of experiences that we avoid or cling to because of wiring that isn't even pertinent in the moment.
So spoiler alert, my experience with this letter, having studied it to my best ability, right, to the best ability that I have, and applying it to the best of my ability, relieved me of some of the most traumatic events of my childhood, youth, upbringing, relieved me of the power they had over me. I never would have thought that any of that stuff had any power over me. And the truth is, how would I have known? If something happened to me at 2 years old, right? If something happens to me at 2 years old and I develop a behavior because of it, well, a traumatic event, I'm a child, I'm 7, I'm 10, I'm 12, whatever. And I develop a behavior as a result of that, and that's the way I've carried on as an adult. How would I know any difference until I go back, relive those events, and learn how to forgive and move forward from those events? How would I know any different? I wouldn't. I'd be stuck in that subconscious world of, I like blue because of this. I like silver cars because of something I saw when I was a child. I was watching a movie, What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams on YouTube, and he meets his daughter in the afterlife, and she died in a car accident before he did. He died in a car accident too, or in a traffic incident, and she meets him, but she looks like an Asian airline stewardess, and she's showing him around the afterlife, and then they're in a boat together, and she says to him, I didn't look like this in life, but one time I was on an airplane with my dad, and I saw him staring at a stewardess who looked just like this, an Asian stewardess wearing this uniform with this name tag. And he said, wow, the Asian people are really lovely people, and they're kind and gentle and intelligent. And so I thought to myself, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And in that moment, her father realizes, I really impacted, the subconscious of my child. And in these moments in the movie, that she is now revealed in her true form, and he first recognizes that that's his daughter, and then she's revealed in her true form, or in her earthly form that he recognizes. But that one off comment gave that child a perception of what success looks like, of what beauty looks like. Now, it'd be super easy in this day and age to blame the dad. Terrible dad, awful things. You did awful things. You taught your daughter this. Well, he was just being a guy. He was just being a dad. The daughter could blame her. Oh, you should know better. You have better self-confidence. All that. No, kid was just being a kid. He was learning.
There's no blame.
Exactly. That's the difference. There is no blame. Now, I'm 2 years old. I go through a traumatic event. Yep. Well, try to tell somebody that's living in try to tell that to me as I'm living in a 2-year-old trauma. I'm in my 40s, and I'm still reliving a 2-year-old trauma every day. I just don't know it. Mm-hmm. I'm living in fear. I'm in distrust of certain types of people, of certain scenarios, behaving a specific way, but that's just me. That's my personality. That's just how I behave. I don't know that I'm still reacting to a trauma that happened when I was 2 years old. I don't know. So the only way for me through that event was to progressively go back through all the trauma of life to that 2-year-old event, relive it in the moment, and recognize that I must realize this and behave and act like a 2-year-old as I'm reliving this event so that I can understand and then forgive. Not even understand fully. Yeah, there is understanding that happens. I needed to find a way. It came to me that I must find a way to forgive everybody for everything they've ever done. I thought, bullshit. That's what are you even talking about? That's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I was carrying a resentment from my mother most of my life. Time travel back to 2 years old, relive that event with all the people that were there and all the things that happened, and realizing that she was giving me a learned behavior. She didn't invent what happened. Somebody did that to her.
She
taught
was
her how to
reacting
behave.
unconsciously also.
Yeah. And then the person that did that to her, are they to blame? Or did somebody gift them that behavior, and them that behavior, and them that behavior, hence the generational curse? Mm-hmm. It's all passed down by our behaviors, just how we learn to exist. And I'm teaching that to the people who are coming up, and then they'll teach that, and they'll teach that. So am I going to be part of that generational curse, or am I now seizing an opportunity to break that and say, okay, yep, I recognize I've done the exact same thing that I was gifted. I've given that to my daughter already. Mm-hmm. I exhibited the same behavior. And it was anger and rage and breaking things. And this is what mad looks like. This is what angry looks like when you misbehave. This is what I do. And then teaching her and talking about it. Remember that? And she doesn't. I'm thankful that she doesn't consciously remember it, but it's in her subconscious. It truly is. Is that, yep, this is how I behaved when I'm angry. And sometimes I still lose my shit when I get angry. Sometimes I still do. Most often, during the event or very soon thereafter, I recognize what's going on, and then I talk to her about it. You see the way Daddy's behaving and I do this? Well, there's another way. I don't have to behave that way. I can do this instead. And we talk through it. And really it's a process of learning from my child, learning how they will receive the communication. What's the best way to communicate with my child so that they will understand? And not only do I learn how to communicate better with my child, but then it enhances the communication between the child and myself. Because now I understand her better. She's talking about something she's hearing, a squealing in her ears, and it sounds funny. I don't understand until I stop thinking like a grown-up and I start thinking like a child. She's using the only word she knows how to describe what I understand as tinnitus, a ringing in my ears. And I can relate to her now. Now I get why now I understand what's going on. That makes sense now. Because I stopped trying to understand it as an adult and I understand it as a child. And I've learned through this letter, through this process, how to go back and live in a child's mind to better understand a child. And that first child was me.
Mm.
And by understanding how a child feels and realizing that the people involved in this traumatic event didn't intend for that, they were doing the best they could given the circumstances, I got to forgive them all. Every one of them. And thereby, and progressively, through all the trauma of life and all the events of life, learning one by one how to forgive each and every person. It actually happened in reverse sequence. Started with the most recent and went back to the furthest away. And it was progressive understanding. And during that process, learning that everything I did was based in fear. Fear of losing something that I had or not getting something that I wanted, loss of security, loss of sex, loss of finance, loss of emotional support, loss of whatever. And all of these perceived losses developed huge barriers around myself, you know. But then that starts to crumble down as I travel backwards as a result of this letter. Travel backwards and learn how to forgive everybody involved. And really, here's the hard part, is understanding my role in all of it. That's ridiculous, some might say. You know, where am I at fault as a 2-year-old? Well, I was yelling, I was screaming, I was, yelling with my older brother, and where was I at fault? I in a very traumatic time, I was behaving that way. Am I to blame? No, I'm a child. There's no blame in this. It's just I had a role to play. What was my role? Maybe not what was my fault, but what was my role? So my older brother and I, he's 4 and I'm 2, and we're screaming and carrying on at a table. I didn't realize, I had no realization, I pieced it together as an adult, that my mother was going through another trauma, and was reacting the best she could, was handling it the best she knew how. And so I get to forgive her and forgive everyone involved, and thereby I'm taught in my guide to life that to be forgiven, I must forgive. And that's my experience. I learned to forgive everybody involved in all these scenarios, and then I'm allowed to forgive myself, because I'm the only one that doesn't forgive me. There might be people out in the world who are holding me in unforgiveness, but that's their problem. That's not mine. That's their challenge, not mine. It's me not forgiving myself. So by forgiving everybody for everything they've ever done, letting go of all these lifelong resentments, either perceived or cognitive or subconscious or whatever, I am allowed to start forgiving myself for everything I've ever done, because everything I ever did was based in fear. And I didn't realize it. It looked like anger. It looked like self-righteousness. It looked like rage. It looked like, piety. It looked like many things, but it was all fear-based. The cart is so far ahead of the horse right now in this discussion, but that's my experience. My subconscious mind was holding me, my unconscious/subconscious mind was holding me prisoner. I heard it said in a movie that I like, a Star Wars movie, that there are many types of prisons. You seem to have the kind that you carry around with you. And I relate to that. I've carried my prison around with me, a prison of fear. And of not measuring up, of not being good enough, of waiting for the other shoe to drop. So unconscious, subconscious, we were talking about that. Driving a car, not realizing point A to point B, just going through the motions. I'm bored, so my brain checks out. And I just go on base knowledge. I know how to do the blinker. I know how to drive. I'm just zoned out and I'm just going. Versus, I find myself driving sometimes especially if I'm upset, at dis-ease, and I'll drive around and I'll say, okay, seek my face, seek my face, seek my face. What does that even mean? And I'll look at the sky and look at the clouds, look for images in the clouds, look at the trees on the side, look for what am I looking for?
Beauty.
And then I see somebody let somebody in traffic. And then I see somebody do a kind gesture at a grocery store. Or I witness one of these and I'm like, that's what they're talking about. Right? Just random acts of kindness. And then I'm like, that's what I've been looking for. That's what my higher power looks like. I'm not seeking the face of some hunky dude or some sweet-looking babe. I'm looking for random acts of kindness, love. Somebody sneezes in a checkout line at the grocery store, and most people are going, oh, gross. I would have been one of the ones going, oh, gross, cover your mouth. Ah. But somebody says, bless you. Just that's what my higher power looks like. This is going to be a whole episode by itself.
Thank you for joining us on our backyard adventure. Hope you got something out of it, because we sure did. It is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. How do we give, how do we love, how do we do with no expectation of return? And it turns out one of the first steps is forgiveness. If you found this episode useful, please consider sharing it with someone who might also find value in it. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing.